Hey, Clayton, Leviticus 11 says that insects have 4 legs. Insects have 6 legs. Oh my gosh. All right. Maybe you noticed this, or maybe you were reading attentively in Leviticus 11. Many people often are kind of skimming through it, so they don't see this. But if you do, you usually say, wait a minute. Leviticus 11, 20 to 24 says this. All flying insects that walk on all fours are to be regarded as unclean to you. There are, however, some flying insects that walk on all fours that you may eat. Those that have joined legs for hopping on the ground, those you may eat. Any kind of locust, katydid, cricket, or grasshopper. But all other flying insects that have 4 legs, you are to regard as unclean. Now, the modern person who has taken at least one science class says, wait a minute. Actually, insects have 6 legs, right? We know this. That's just what defines an insect. You can't have an insect with 4 legs. That isn't a thing. Bible, you don't understand science. You're wrong. Okay, let's talk about this. We've got to remember that the modern taxonomy of living creatures, where we say we've got these particular definitions for these particular words to label these creatures, that was not the same taxonomy they used back then. That was not the same categories that they were using. In our world, insect has a very specific definition, but just because we use that word in our day and society doesn't mean that it had that exact specific meaning in every context and culture, okay? This is why in the Old Testament, when it categorizes bats, it categorizes the bats with the birds. Why? Because the categories they were using were flying things and walking things, sky animals and land animals. And so it said, well, bats are flying things. And so we say, no, they're mammals, not birds. They said they fly. They don't walk on the ground, okay? And so they were just using different categories. And we don't want to judge the Bible based on our categories. Also, don't assume Israelites were dumb, okay? This is one of the things that we fall into accidentally. We just assume ancient people were stupider than us. But the reality is, these are people, this was a society where they did actually eat bugs, which means they might have been more familiar with them than you, right? Like they might have said, oh, I've looked at the locust that I've eaten or the grasshopper that I'm doing here, right? Like they would actually know the anatomy probably better than most of us. Most of us live very insect-free lives when you think about this, right? Compared to an agrarian society, we live in air-conditioned, sealed homes where we say, oh, if there's a bug, I got to do so. I got to get someone to kill all the bugs in this space, right? So they would have seen more bugs than we do. And I mean, even our kids, they don't go outside anymore to collect bugs in their boxes, right? They learn about bugs from YouTube videos, which means if you talk to someone in ancient Israelite culture, they would have had more direct experience with bugs than many of us. And so they would have known what it looked like, okay? So let's back up and say, when it says that an insect walks on all fours, what does it mean? It's really just an idiom, right? It's an idiom that means they walk in a horizontal, not a vertical position, right? It's sort of like saying, I was up all night thinking about it. Now, the person might have actually been sleeping a little bit, like they're just kind of having fitful sleep and they keep waking up, but doesn't mean that if they say, I was up all night thinking about it, that they never drifted off, right? It's an idiom. Or if I say, I haven't eaten all day, well, maybe I had a coffee and a snack and whatever, but I haven't had a full meal, right? So we've got to make sure that we're reading the language in a natural way, not saying, I'm going to put this strict definition that we have in our culture, how I would say it and what I would mean, and put that on you. We've got to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, you know how to communicate and you know what you're talking about, and I'm going to try to understand that rather than say, we're better than you.
Thanks for listening. If you've got your own questions, email questions@BibleSavvy.com. Like and subscribe to catch our regular episodes every Monday on the Bible Savvy Podcast.